Hi, this is Rena Davis, and I am happy to be part of Jen Stewart's Sparkle with Jen online event. Jen is a friend who I've done her radio show a couple of times now, and I have been very pleased with the way that she interviews and is able to really help somebody relax and just dive into the information that you're trying to share and pull it out of you. Today she's having some internet issues, so she asked me if I wouldn't mind recording my session so that she can post it, which I'm happy to do, although I do miss seeing her. So, without further ado, I'm going to talk about stretching mind and body. And I am a certified yoga teacher and mindfulness teacher, as well as being a certified coach. And so we're going to start off actually in the body. I'm going to stand up in a moment so that you can see what I'm doing. And we'll just stretch out some of the areas that maybe are feeling a little bit tighter right now, either from sitting often because many of us are working from home, or from just tension and stress gathering up in different areas of the body, as it tends to do. When we're carrying a lot of emotion, it tends to gather. We're all different. We all gather that in different areas. Some of the more typical spots that we tend to hold emotion is the hips, the neck, the back. Different emotions tend to be carried in different parts. So fear is associated with the low back, for example, and I won't go into all of that because I don't remember them all, but I have a shoddy memory. But so we're all different. Chest, neck, shoulders, low back, hips are big points for people that we do tend to feel these kinds of stresses. And if you can imagine from a physiological point of view, when we're hugging in and covering our chest and heart, it's a very protective kind of posture. So when we're feeling a lot of emotion and stress, that is the tendency to kind of pull into ourselves and protect. And so opening up, we're also able to release some of that emotional stress. So we will work on that a little bit today. So without further ado, let me just rearrange myself a little bit. And we'll just start up in the neck. This is an area that a lot of people have tension in, regardless of what's going on in life. And we're just going to start by dropping ear to shoulder. So as you drop your ear to shoulder, I want you to pay attention to the positioning of your head. So we're not looking down right now. Sometimes I do, but right now we're keeping the face looking forward and dropping over to one side. And as you hold there, I don't want you to think about forcing your head down. We're just allowing a gentle stretch. This shoulder is staying down, not because you're pushing it down. Just let it relax and be a little bit heavy. And as you inhale, I want you to imagine that your energy is sweeping up into your neck, and exhale and back down. So we'll just hold for a few breaths today. You can hold up to a minute if you like, and then we'll pick it up and go over to the other side. And then the head can come up again. Holding right here, this time we're going to take the hand and place it at the back of the head. And without really pulling on the head, but just adding a little bit of weight, we're going to look down toward the hip. And again, we're not pulling on the head, we're just adding a little bit of weight from the hand. And what this is doing is getting into the top part of your trapezius, which is right in the back, the top back. If you can imagine the V shape coming down from the shoulders down toward the spine, that's your traps. And then release that again. And again, you can hold longer if that feels good for you. And then over to the other side. And once again, just come low, looking toward the hip right now. Keep breathing as you hold that. And release the hand and pick up the head. And then rolling the shoulders out, just give them a nice roll out. Make that as big as you can. I have a lot of crunching going on. I don't know about you. When I get tense, this is my spots, and then roll in the other direction. So I get really crunchy in there. And that's pretty normal. When we hold tension, we tend to get all kinds of adhesions happening in the muscle, little sticky spots, and they make some noise when we're trying to break them up. Nothing to be overly worried about unless there's a lot of pain involved. And relax the shoulders, and then take your hands up right behind your head and open your elbows as wide as you can to open the chest. You can stay right here, or if you like, you can start to dip your head back and open your throat a little bit. So as you do this, I want your elbows to stay nice and wide. If you have any issues in your vertebra in the neck, so up in the cervical spine, you're not going to dip back. You're going to keep your head up and just push your elbows open. And of course, any of these that you start to experience discomfort, you're going to, come back to a neutral position or just relax out of it a little bit. Keep the breath moving. And then turning to one side. So we're trying to keep those elbows open. And then over to the other side. Getting a little twist in the back here. Trying to think about that mid-back twist. This is an area that we don't twist a whole lot. And then bringing it back into neutral and releasing your arms. Again, you can roll the shoulders out if you need to. And let's just take our hands and place them behind the back. So I'm going to try and back that up a little bit so you can maybe see a little bit more of what I'm doing. So right now I have grabbed my opposite elbows on both sides, and I'm again opening the chest, trying to release any pent up emotion from the chest, from the heart chakra. And if it feels good, once again, no issues in your vertebra, you can dip your head back too and get through the throat and the throat chakra. Breathing deeply and feeling that opening across the chest. And then releasing and just letting the shoulders come out in front and giving yourself a little movement. And I'm going to come up on my chair a little bit. You won't be able to see my face. I'm hoping that you'll be able to see my knee. So you can't see my knee. Let me see if I can tilt you a little bit so you can see what I'm trying to show you here. Oh, and I lost it. So I have my knee on the chair and I'm pushing my hip forward. This might be enough. If it's not enough, you could also grab your foot to get the stretch across the hip flexor here and into the quad. So if you are taking the foot, that will look like this. When you do that, make sure you bend into your hip a little bit before you come fully straight, because it'll avoid getting a cramp in your hamstring. So holding right there. For people who want to do more, they can do more. You can be doing this on the floor, of course. But if it's enough, it's a pretty good height. The chair I have right now, you could also step more forward and keep the chair under your knee to come in a little bit deeper. Hips get really tight when we sit a lot. So I encourage you to stretch them well. All the time, not just during a pandemic, but all the time. And those few little things, if you were to do them often, they really will help. Now, the other thing that you can do seated is another hip stretch. And this was I'm going to bring you down here. I'm trying to give you all kinds of seated options. So this one here, which is like a is just to stretch the hip again. This foot here is flexed the whole time, and you could be folding into it if that felt good. All right. And of course you would do all of those on the other side. I hope that's enough. I know it's weird camera angles because I'm trying to do various things today. So with that said, I want to talk about mindfulness. So mindfulness is a real passion of mine. It's the reason I started to be a mindfulness teacher is because I was very passionate about it. I wanted to learn more about it. I wanted to help others learn about it. And I am very happy to share about it anytime. In a nutshell, mindfulness is about bringing present moment awareness, of course. And by being present and coming into ourselves in a moment, we're able to get a greater sense of self. We're able to have reduced stress and anxiety. We can have less self-doubt, more resilience. And those are all really good things anytime. It's about, systematically really getting your attention, regulating your attention. So bringing it into whatever you want to bring it into your own energy, into a moment, an interaction. It's being, more patient with yourself, with others in the world. So it's got all these various aspects. And in order to cultivate mindfulness, we have to almost have a sense of starting from the beginning over and over and over. So there's no end to it. You don't learn it and done, one and done. It's not one of those things. It's a lifelong practice, much like yoga is. And maybe that's the reason I like both of them. There's no finish line. We're not trying to get somewhere. You don't go, I did it. There's no sense of that at all in mindfulness. It's about just always being aware of the moment that you can be in, and bringing your awareness back to that moment, because we are all human and we will lose that awareness. We always will. And that's okay. And being okay with that, because we're not perfect humans either, are we? I know I'm not anyway. So present moment, it requires focus that we don't always have. We often find ourselves ruminating about the past, anticipating the future, depression and anxiety. And when we're able to get into this area, this time, this space, and we're not ruminating or anticipating, we're able to just be. And that's great. So if we're not in that moment, that's when we see suffering. So suffering is not really about what's happening in this moment in time. We might all feel like we're suffering right now with COVID and with, emotions running high right now. It may feel as if we're suffering right now, but the truth is, right now in this moment, I am sitting in my home. I just finished having a coffee. I'm chatting with you all. And that's the only thing that's happening right now, except that I can also see the sun outside my window. I'm safe. I'm content. I'm fed. I'm fine. I'm okay. And when we can get to that point, that's present moment awareness. Don't make any mistakes. I come out of the moment all the time. Everybody does. So, just allowing yourself that time, though, to come into right now, it helps you to understand, even when you are experiencing an emotion or a pain or what have you, it helps you to understand that they pass. It helps you to see, to experience the passing of these things. So mindfulness is not about trying to get rid of anything. It's not about trying to get rid ourselves of unhappiness or rid ourselves of pain or rid ourselves of whatever is going on in our lives. It's about really experiencing it. And it's different than meditation. I think that sometimes people think that meditation and mindfulness are the same thing. They have similar paths. They have similar I don't want to say outcomes because there's no real outcome to either. They have similar experiences, but they are not the same thing. They might be, two sides of a coin sort of thing. So they have their similar ways, and we definitely use meditation to learn mindfulness and mindfulness to learn meditation, but they are two different things. So when we meditate, sometimes I know for me, when I meditate, I get into my body, often using body scans, just relaxing various parts of the body, trying to get rid of stress and anxiety. And that is perfectly good. But it is meditation. It's a great meditation, don't get me wrong. I do them all the time. Mindfulness is about experiencing, though. So if I am in pain or in an emotional crisis of some sort, if I have somebody to help me, especially to walk me through it, to say, where do you feel that right now? And where I can point it out and say, I'm feeling this in my stomach. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling, my stomach is doing flip-flops or something like that. Then you can be fully aware of that and how it feels physically, mentally, emotionally. And when we come into that full awareness of discomfort, we watch the waves of it. We watch how the waves go by. And we're able to go, okay, it doesn't last all the time. And when I'm able to stop resisting pain and just feel it, then it tends to go. So there's a little formula that I have found remarkably useful for my journey with mindfulness, and I hope that you do too. And that is such a simple little formula. It's suffering times resistance equals pain. So we may be suffering, and our suffering may be on a scale of 1 to 10, say it's a 5. We're suffering at a level 5. Because of physical pain, emotional pain, whatever. When we resist that, say our resistance is at a level 3, we're pushing back against it. We don't want to feel this, so we're pushing against it and going, I don't want to feel this. When we do that, if you multiply those two, you get 15. If you have your resistance at a level 1, however, and your suffering is at a level 5, then it's 5. It just stays the same. So by resisting, and of course these numbers are not accurate, it's just a little formula to help you visualize, but when we're resisting what we're experiencing, we're gonna end up suffering more, partly because it goes on longer. It'll just keep going. The more we resist, the more we're, stuck in it, resisting it, fighting against it. It'll go on longer. It'll feel heavier. It'll feel more extreme, more intense. But when we let go of the suffering and go really dig in, what does this feel like right now? Where am I feeling it? What are the emotions around it? And make space for that, we can reduce our pain in the end. So that's just a really simple tool to help you consider what it's like not to resist. I'm just thinking right now, I think I mixed up my suffering and pain. It's pain times resistance equals suffering. So it's the suffering part, sorry about that. It's the suffering part that is kind of up to us. We may suffer, and we don't want to suffer, of course, but the level of suffering can change depending on our thoughts. I hope that's clear. And please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to write them in, and I will do my best to answer any questions. I wanted to talk as well about automaticity. So automaticity is the best example of it, I'll share this, is driving. So when we drive somewhere, we're going to work or something, it's a route we take all the time, and we get there and we don't even remember the drive. That's the most common example of automaticity that I've heard over the years. But automaticity is a lot more than that. It's that lost in, another place and not being aware of what we're doing right now. It is that, but it's also those automatic thoughts that enter our mind. So it's not only our actions that might be automatic, but it's those thoughts. So that when trigger A happens, this reaction happens every time, unless we break it, right? So, for example, if whenever somebody sneers at me, they're like, look at you, I go and get my back up, let's say, which I think I used to a lot. I get my back up about it and be pissed off about it and, don't like that person, whatever. If that is my automatic reaction, that is automaticity, right? So until something comes along to break that, it's going to continue that way. The brain pattern is there. We build these patterns through our brain, these grooves in the brain. In yoga, we call them samskaras. These are the thoughts that it's the easiest path. It's been built already. This can happen with any trigger. So anything like, see, these days I'm finding myself triggered by Trump, Trump's face. So every time I see Trump, I just go, ugh. I could choose not to see Trump in many ways, and yet it's one of those things that I've gotten caught up in. So something needs to change my reaction, and one of the ways to change it is just not to have that trigger happening all the time. So that's one way to go. If that's not reasonable, though, if it's something, I don't know, your partner chews with their mouth open or something like that, then it's going to be more difficult unless you change partners, right? So rather than choosing that same reaction over and over and over, we can choose something else. We might choose to react with kindness, for example. I mean, we folks in the mindfulness world are big on kindness and compassion. And, maybe your partner isn't aware that they're doing it, or that's their automatic thing when they eat, right? So they have their own automaticity going on and you don't get it, but they don't get yours. So, having that mutual compassion and understanding is helpful. It's not always going to happen, but it's helpful. Changing the story in your mind is sometimes helpful. You can always rewrite your story. So changing from that is so irritating and gross to, I don't know, maybe they have breathing issues and they have a hard time chewing with their mouth closed. And then you can set up that compassion for them. So changing stories, changing attitudes, changing perceptions, all of that is up to us. So basically, any time that we respond in an automatic way, that is automaticity in a nutshell. So bringing that conscious awareness, that full awareness to a situation can help, right? It can help to notice what's triggering the automatic thoughts, what's triggering the irritation in that little gap between the situation that is triggering you and the thought. So whatever it is for you, whatever is making you unhappy, you can find that little thing, that's doing it to you, and find the gap before the reaction you have happens, and you can be better off. That sometimes takes help to see those things because we don't always see ourselves clearly. I know I don't. I've worked with people on getting my own reactions under control a lot, and I still have to. Trump, as I just said, it's a big thing for me, for many of us, I think, for good reason. But anyway, I digress. So I want to just for a moment give you a little visualization so that you can maybe tap into that right now. So As you start to visualize, you can get yourself comfortable, of course, both feet on the floor. And you might close your eyes if you have an easier time visualizing a situation or something happening with the eyes closed. Please go ahead and do that. And I want you to bring to mind some situation where you respond the same every time. I encourage you not to choose something that's too emotional. So, mild to medium emotion. A little thing about mindfulness, it can bring up some pretty strong emotions, and we can get too caught up in going inward. So just before we do this visualization, I do want to mention that if the emotions become too strong, a thing to do is immediately feel your feet on the earth or on the floor, as it were, and come right back into your body. So if that should happen to you, but I'm encouraging you now to choose something that isn't overly emotional, just maybe mild to medium emotion. And so again, we're going to bring to your mind some situation where you respond automatically every time. Might be with a loved one, might be with your boss, with a coworker, anybody that has that. Might be, your kids, you say no automatically all the time, anything at all. And with the eyes closed, get clear on this picture, this situation. And notice what you hear and see. What do you smell, if anything, or taste? And then become aware of how you feel in your body. In this situation, do you feel a physical response? Do you feel a tightening anywhere at all? And just be aware of that. Look at it, having compassion for yourself. And knowing that this response, it was the best response you had up until now. So you're in this moment, and I want you to consider a different response to the one that you automatically choose. How might you respond differently? Might you be more compassionate, more loving or kind? Might you be more understanding? Just being aware of the various responses that you might have to this situation. And just allowing your mind to go to those different ways that aren't the automatic response. And this doesn't mean that they're better ways, they're just different. Knowing that you choose the response. So you can stay with that for longer, of course, if you want to pause the video, or you can ground into your feet. And right here, just as a little practice, I want you to notice 3 things that you hear right now. And with the eyes open, notice 5 things that you see in your space. And notice the feel of what you're sitting on, the feel of your feet. And these are just ways to ground into yourself once again. So if you were to experience during a mindful time during a time that you're trying to practice mindfulness that's especially difficult, if you were to experience a really high emotion, that would be the way to come back to now, is to just tune into your senses and see what is around me right now. So I have a plant in front of me, I've got my lamp over there, a chair, I've got my pictures on the walls, whatever it is for you, to just come right back into this moment and lower those sensations that you might be feeling. This, of course, can be done with eating. That's a very popular way to use mindfulness. So when we automatically go to the cupboard and grab something because we're bored or because we're, whatever the case may be, I don't know, we're stressed, when we're just feeling that little something, it's after dinner and we go, I like having something sweet after dinner, whatever the case may be for you. That's another time that you can practice mindfulness that isn't especially emotional. It probably has really deep emotional roots, but isn't emotional in the moment. So it's a really simple way to practice and kind of go, okay, why do I want that right now? What is that? And to get, again, deeper into the emotional stuff, you may work with a counselor or somebody like that, and that's great if you can do that. I do want to talk about one more subject of mindfulness, and that is non-judgment. So judgment, we judge things all the time. And you may not, when I say judgment, you might be thinking that you're putting people down or things like that, and that's not necessarily what I mean. So when talking about mindfulness, judgment comes in many forms. So judgment can be to judge something as good or bad. It's as simple as that. This thing is good, this thing is bad, this thing is yucky, that thing is great, whatever the case may be. So we tend to look at things as humans through the lens of two poles. We look at hot, cold, good, bad, beautiful, ugly, whatever the case may be. And when we can look at a situation, object, person, whatever the case may be, including ourselves, without that good, bad type dichotomy, and just look at a human having an experience that is just that, an experience, we are so much better off because we don't judge ourselves harshly. And if you're anything like me, you've done a ton of it over your lifetime. Those are more of those samskaras that I talked about earlier when we talked about automatic thinking. And judgments are not truly helpful. Even when they are good judgments, they may not be so helpful. I spent a lot of my earlier days, especially, if you read my bio, you know I have a lot of experience with depression and addiction and some other stuff, and I have experienced a whole lot of self-judgment and self-esteem issues and devaluing myself and all of that sort of thing. And to come to a place of not judging myself harshly has been difficult. I'm 52 now. It's still difficult sometimes, even though I practice mindfulness all the time and I catch myself with those thoughts. But there's still those nagging moments that we all have where we go, I don't think I'm good enough. But it's so natural for us to do that because we've learned it in our society. We've learned it over our lifetime, sometimes from parents, just watching them judge themselves or maybe being criticized through workplaces or what have you, all of it. So this is really, really normal, but I so encourage you to practice kindness for yourself and to practice not judging yourself. When we start on this kind of practice, we sometimes judge ourselves for judging. And I know that sounds funny, but it's one of the big things that we do. I go, damn, I judged that again. Damn. But you're judging. So let that shit go. That's what I have to say. Let that shit go. We are all in this in this space, on our journeys where we'll be judging each other, we'll be judging ourselves. It's human nature. Mindfulness asks us to go beyond human nature in some ways, and it's tough. It's really tough sometimes. And that's okay, because every experience we have leads us to another place where we get to practice, right? So every single experience we have, we use the tools that we have. Sometimes they're enough, sometimes they're not enough to feel good, but in the end, the situations that we have in our lives are just that. They're just tools to get to the next part of our life. And we always do the best we can. I truly believe that we always do the best we can with what we have in our moment. With that, I'm going to leave it, and I hope that you enjoyed this little talk about mindfulness. Again, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to hit me up, and I am happy to answer. And I bid you farewell, and I hope you all have a fantastic evening. Thanks.